Welcome in, everyone. We're doing a bit of a roundup here to close out what I'm sure has been a great year for everyone watching, myself included, and I know a lot of the viewers. It's been an incredibly strong 2023, and we're going to do a rundown of my personal top 5 Delta Force stories we've done this year. In this video, in this roundup, you're going to hear Tyler Gray talk about how he was blown up and almost died in Iraq. We're going to get 2 different stories from Brent Tucker about also getting shot and then battling ISIS in Syria. We're going to talk with former Delta Force operator Dave Nielsen, about his combat experience against terrorism. And then we're going to close it out with Brad Thomas's famous patch story about wearing the patch of a slain firefighter who was killed on 9/11 into combat as well. So those are the top 5 moments we're going to do in this video. So without further ado, let's get underway.
Walk me through how this happens, because it's an explosive device. What do you remember from how it went down?
So there's a lot to give the full explanation of why. I can't give the full explanation of why what happened.
Got it.
Talk about a thing that I can't talk about.
Got it. No, I understand.
Yeah, but it's unfortunate because if I could talk about that part, it would make so much sense. But the very short version is we were in Solder City that night, and we did an offset. So we were walking through Solder City at night, and we hit a house. Like, that's the house. We hit the house. We go inside, and it's just like, or I assume like a law enforcement. You can tell when you go in a house if the people are guilty or not. You can just feel it. Generally, in my experience, if you go in there and they're shouting and the women are going crazy, and it's the wrong house. If you go in and no one says a word, it's the right house, because the guilty just shut up and don't say anything. The not guilty, you're like, what the hell are you doing here?
Right. Yeah.
Guilty, they're just like, yeah, we know why they're here. It's not surprising. They're not happy about it, but they're not surprised. And so anyways, that house, I was like, nah, just no, not these people. And so anyways, we heard that I think 2 teams, they're like, hey, we actually think it's over here. So 2 teams went out. One was actually a team from the unit that I now play on TV, that was attached to us. They went out. They went on the front side, or went around to go to the front side of this other house, and my team was basically going towards the back side of the house. So very shortly, what happened was, it was the wrong house, and when we hit that one house, the actual house it was, which was next door, which is not exactly next door because Solder City is kind of weird of how it's built. But, they heard us. They were getting ready, prepping, their gear, and so they were ready to go. So when that team came around, a bunch of dudes opened up out of the front, what I assume would be the living room, with AKs, and shot. I think they shot 3. If I'm not mistaken, they shot 3 of the members of that team. 2 of them were pretty much out of the fight at that point. But they were, it was heavy. I wasn't on that side of the house, but just hearing it, I was like, oh man, that's extreme. So I ran into the back door, which came into the kitchen, cleared through there, went in the hallway, and those same guys, as we approached that room, shot through the walls of that hallway, shot the guy literally right next to me. So then we backed off, and then we were and I'd have to draw it out, but we were in a tactical position that was just there wasn't a lot we could do. So we were trying to kind of figure out how to solve it. And the next thing I know, I remember just the whole room, or actually it wasn't really a room, it was the hallway, so it was more like a tube straight at me, and just everything exploded. And I actually remember hitting the ground and looking up down the hallway, I was just confused. I didn't know what had happened. And I can say, you know, getting shot at, okay. It's one thing, but the explosion made me feel small. It was like a superhero just grabbed me and was like, or it was like the Hulk grabbed me and was like, it was just, it felt like a supernatural power. And it blew, so it was a nighttime hit. It blew my nods and my nod mount off my face. So I went from, you know, under nods to not being able to see anything. It obviously, my arm, I thought it blew off. I'm trying to think of what else it wrecked, but wrecked several things. But and everything was pitch black for me, and I really didn't know what was going on. I just felt my arm was blown off, so I got up and walked outside to the back, and there was a wall that we had hopped to get in. That wasn't happening, so I just put my back against the wall and tried to take care of myself. But I never lost consciousness. The only time actually I did lose consciousness is when, and I still to this day don't know how they got me over that wall. I have no idea. But other than that, probably 5 minutes that they got me over the wall, I never lost consciousness.
And I am literally stunned. I don't even know what to say. That is every part of that story, from the moment the first shots rang out to you getting back over the wall, losing consciousness, is hard for me, who's obviously never been in a gunfight, and I assume most people watching this who've never been in a gunfight, to even comprehend. Did you take a moment? Was there a moment when you looked down at your arm and you kind of understood, like, oh shit, like I'm in deep trouble? Or were you in such a state of shock that you didn't even really, quite frankly, understand what had just happened to your body? And if you can explain, how much of your arm are you able to see? Like, do you have a good assessment of how damaged it is in the moment?
So that's not a question I think I've ever been asked, but it's a good question. So when it happened, it killed the nerve in my arm to about here. So and I know this sounds weird, but it's the best way to describe it. So it felt gone from here. It felt not there. I know it sounds weird. And then I got outside, and there was a porch light, and I looked at it, and if you can see, so this was all gone. I mean, it was holding on by, you know, basically half my arm, and it was broken in, I want to say 8 places, so I can't even replicate how it was hanging. And then up here, this was flayed out this way, and this was flayed out this way. So from about just above my wrist to my shoulder, when I looked at my arm in that light, I mean, it was hamburger. It was done. It was hamburger meat. It was zombie flesh. So yeah, I looked at it and I went, well, that's gone. That's going. And I knew it was bad. And then my first thing was, well, the arm's going, I'm losing my right arm. That sucks. And then I thought, and I'll never forget this thought in a million years. Then I literally saw that I had an arterial bleed. And I went, you know, you're losing your arm. And then I was like, oh, I've got an arterial bleed, which if you have an arterial bleed, you've got, I'll be conservative and say 45 seconds to a minute to do something before you won't die. But in about 45 seconds, you're going to lose enough blood to where it's going to be hard for you to have the strength to solve it, if that makes sense. So yes. I remember seeing that and going, you know, well, okay, yeah, you're going to lose your right arm, but you better solve that bleed or you die. And that would be stupid. Don't know why I used that word, but in my head, I remember saying, and then you die, and that would be stupid. So, yeah, I knew how bad it was. And I'll tell you this, after I looked at it under that light, I did not, and I'm not exaggerating. Well, I did actually look at it one more time, but I didn't look at my arm uncovered for probably a year. I mean, I literally like ignored it. In fact, in hindsight, I should have wore a freaking eye patch on my right eye. I just didn't look. I didn't want to be reminded of it. The next time I looked at it was actually when they saved it, because they told me they were going to cut it off when I went into surgery. But I woke up the next morning, looked over, it was there, and you know, they saved it. And actually, by the way, they told me. Now again, I was on a lot when they told me that they were going to cut it off. I was on quite a lot of drugs. I was like, do whatever you want, cut off the legs. I don't care. You know, I was like crazy. But they told me when they saved it, the only reason that they even attempted to save it was because how many extremity surgeries they had done during that time frame because of V-beds. So they just were now so advanced on, and again, I don't know the details, but they just had new techniques. He said a year ago, we would have cut it off without even attempting to, again, do something different.
Did you ever find out what had happened to all the bad guys that were in the house? Did anyone ever kind of debrief you and say, hey, after the explosion went off, here's kind of how everything shook out afterwards?
Yes, that was years later, but yes. Yeah. I've never told anyone this, but I'll tell you, or everyone watching this. Only one person lived on that whole thing. And only one person lived, and the reason that person lived is because I didn't shoot him. And I could have. He actually had an AK. When I came into the room, his gun hit me in the chest.
And so was it? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, his gun hit, like, it was so close. I turned and his gun hit me. And the only reason I didn't shoot him is I could see behind him. I can't remember if it was pink or purple, but it was a color that stood out. I want to say pink, but again, I don't remember. But I could see like a pink or purple outline behind him. His wife was behind, or one of his, I don't know, was behind him. And that, in that, millisecond, so I ended up taking the gun from him. I threw him outside the room. They took him, but he's the only one that lived. And ironically, it's one of my few regrets of my time, because that guy ended up being the main facilitator of the whole thing.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So all the other guys, they weren't around to do anything anymore. But for many years, I wondered if he went through the system and then got out and went and hurt other people. So one of my biggest regrets is that.
Move on to a couple combat related things from your career. Just kind of like you were talking about that chunk after you became an operator. Was there any mission that stood out to you where you thought, man, we are not, like, this is as bad as it's going to get. We're not making it out of this one? Or was it you guys just had such an edge, you waxed whatever target you came up on?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say with an enemy engagement that I was ever like, oh, we're not getting out of this. But I'll tell you this, nobody can kill Americans like Americans. And there was a time where, it was, there was an M1 tank in the way. And I wrote a story about this called Face Your Tank. It wasn't supposed to be there. We were going, in Yusufia from here to here. We come out on this big open area, and there's an American M1 tank, and it's 3:30 in the morning. And we had to get through, and it's like, okay, we couldn't get these guys on the radio. They're probably asleep in their tank. But if we're walking by and they wake up and see our heat signatures, they're just going to murder us. So it's like, what do we do? And I said, I'll just go up and knock on the tank. And everybody laughed, like, that's so stupid, but that's what we ended up doing. So I go up, and it's like knocking on a tree. There's just no sound. It's such thick metal. So I took my gun barrel and And then the guy's like, "What the hell are you doing here?" I said, "What the hell are you doing here?" You know, he's like, "Well, you're lucky you knocked, or we would have killed you." And I said, "All right, cool." So, I mean, that's what I worry about is Americans and our gunships and everything.
Friendly fire, yeah. That's what was the reason? Did they give a reason for why this tank was seemingly there for no reason at all?
I mean, there was a few of them, but this one in particular, no, I never tracked that down. I was just, but I've used that, as a metaphor for facing my fear of the day. Every day there's a tank I got to go knock on.
That's a great way of looking at it. I mean, that's an excellent way of looking at it. Like you said, they could have killed you. You still had to walk up there and figure out what they were doing there. One of the questions I enjoy asking guys from your unit, and I've asked, I think, pretty much all of them, when it came to dealing with regime loyalists, guys that were in like a structured military, they might just have been Iraqi soldiers. They're not fanatical or motivated by insane ideology versus the extreme terrorist or guys like Zarqawi, bin Laden, saw people's heads off, stuff like that. Did it feel better to kill guys like that than regime loyalists, or did it make no difference to you?
It made no difference to me. After a couple of years, I actually kind of respected the military guys. I mean, there's one in particular here that he lives here in North Carolina. He defected during Desert Storm. You should talk to him. I'll put him in. He walked from he was a Shia, right? He walked from Baghdad to Saudi Arabia in Desert Storm. Long story, but he ended up in America. He didn't talk to his family until he became a language instructor at Delta. We took him back in 03 to his family's house. He didn't want to call them all those years because he thought Saddam Hussein, would be looking at them. So, from 91 to 03, we took him back and he shows up and they see his son. So I kind of respect people who fight and who don't. The ones that are just like, they actually do grab kids or women a lot and hide behind them. And you just shoot them. It's not like the movie's like, oh my gosh, they've got it. You just shoot them in the freaking head. That's why we train so much, man.
Right.
Like the movies need to catch up. They've gotten better, but like that doesn't happen. Like, dude, you're giving me your whole nugget there. I'm gonna just your brain's coming out of your head in about half a second.
No, well, on the terrorist side though, I think like you just said, like there's a respect thing with the uniformed soldiers. In World War II, you had the Nazis, they're wearing uniforms. You had the Russians, they're wearing uniforms. You got the U.S. These are standing armies, right? These are trained soldiers. I'm obviously not defending the atrocities of any of those people.
Right.
And obviously the United States is the clear-cut good guys in World War II, as we are as the United States of America. But now we're talking about people, like you just said, they hide behind women and children. They behead people. They behead Americans. I mean, it just has to feel good to know that when you kill one of those guys, you're taking an absolute scumbag off the table.
For sure, man. And like one in particular, we had just cleared this whole village, nasty people, and we had done gun runs. I mean, it was like there's a bunch of them in this small village. Our intel is good, so like we always got our guys. This particular village, we just caught them, a bunch of bad dudes, gun runs. So like we're coming over the berm right after the gun runs. There's dudes laying there with their guts out, like, hey, help, and it's like good. And we clear this whole village. We get to the last one. And, when we talked about it later, like everybody had this weird feeling, but there's this woman, and I'm like 4 in the stack. And she turns around and it's a dude wearing a dress with an AK and shoots my 3 buddies in front of me. They go down. and, you know, missed me. But so we did what we did, flanked around, my team leader killed him, but then there's a bunch of people in the house. So, you know, we set up like we do to take a house down, and we poke a hole in it with a rocket. And it's this, man, this is like, it was either the pepper story or this one that I was going to talk to my therapist about. This is a tough one. So this house starts burning, and then you hear kids crying. And so I'm like, okay, they're gonna let the kids out, right? You know, I'm like, hey, boss, we need to get the kids out. Nobody did anything. Nobody knew what to do. This is still the one that just bugs the shit out of me. So I hear screaming, the house is burning. I don't know exactly what I'll have. I mean, we're evacing our guys. My good friends are gut shot and shot in the shoulder, and, you know, like for the third and fourth time in their careers, you know. So it was I still don't know everything that happened, but I remember getting high ground, and this sort of old man, I'm proud of this. This is nasty, but I'm proud of this. This sort of old man came out the back. Now I was up high about 200 meters away, and I saw him come out and look around, and he thought he was getting out. And I just, you know, I could have shot him right here, but I like shot lower, and I just hit him in the gut, and I watched him. And then again, like I wanted him to hurt, man. And I still do, because he kept those kids in that house.
See, that's what I'm talking about. The barbarianism is sickening of what these people are capable of. First off, I'm pretty confident I know two people who got shot in the story you just told. When we turn off the recording, I'll ask. I don't want to name them in case I'm wrong. I semi work at the same. Well, we'll do it when the camera's off. But that's what I'm talking about, though. You're dealing with sadistic, disgusting, evil behavior. Do you think the American public understood the animals you were fighting against?
Some do, a lot do. It seems like most do, but it seems like the ones that don't are the ones that, it's like, why are the sheep giving orders to the shepherds, is how I put it. You know?
Unpackage that a little bit. When you say that, what do you mean?
It just seems like the minority, and I'm not talking racial at all.
Right, of course.
Like, diversity is the byproduct of greatness. Okay, when we make a great team with dudes who are willing to go through what we go through, it's diverse. All right, it just happens like that. So, but I mean, the minority opinion is the loudest. I don't know why. I don't, in a sense, I don't care, but I'm still, it's just, that's where we're at, man. There's no leadership. It's certainly not me. Okay. The reason I'm here and doing this and able to do this and will boldly tell any story and have guys back me up. I'm not going to embellish anything. I did hundreds and hundreds of hits. I have them all recorded. Killed many people, and will never regret that. It's the best feeling, the most indescribable feeling, to do your job, what you trained to do, go in there, crush them. I mean, it's like winning a football game, or winning a football game is like that, but it's indescribable to do your job, you know, and come in and they grab a kid and you just poke a hole in their head. Like the best sniper shot I ever took was 2 meters away. I never took a long, sexy shot. I was a sniper for a while, but this guy grabbed his wife and was rolling, using her for protection. And I'm moving, and I didn't think about it, which is why it was perfect. I just shot him, and his brain came out in his wife's lap. It was the weirdest thing in the world.
what do you think about, what do you think it says about a man that would hide behind his wife?
It's a culture um, that is different, and it's not the norm, because I learned Arabic after this, and I went to many countries in plain clothes without a weapon. Once I learned the language and the culture, I don't know. It was just, there's people like that in our country that would do that, the cowards, and those are the ones that seem to have the loudest voice.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Certainly on the loudest voice. I don't know if you saw the news recently, but there was a young woman that went to give a speech on a college campus, Riley Gaines, and she was just talking about, she was a former college female athlete. She's like, I don't think biological men should be stealing our spots in sports, and a mob essentially held her hostage. She had to be barricaded in a room with the
God.
police because they couldn't get her out, and the mob said if she pays us, we'll let her leave. It's like that. That to me is cowardice behavior. It's cowardice behavior that the mob behaves that way, and two, it's cowardice behavior that none of the adult men in that mob thought to themselves, maybe we shouldn't keep a 22-year-old young woman locked in a room because we disagree with an opinion the vast majority of Americans agree with. Sorry, that's a sidebar. I'm going on a tangent,
No.
but that's your point. That's the point
Yes.
you're making about the loudest voices it's a fringe minority, but they just are so loud that they convince other people to shut up because they're fearful of that mob.
Yes. And stop it. Hey, men. Hey, if you're a man, stop it. One of my podcasts is a chaplain's assistant, my friend, who shot this guy that was dropping babies in Afghanistan. Nobody did anything. And he's terrorizing the army at this point. This dude's called the baby dropper. He's a thug warlord. Girl babies, right? Infanticide. And he had done it before. So he's got a girl baby. And, regular armies are, sir, put the baby down, with the bullhorn. He's just terrorizing everybody. He had done it several times. My buddy shot him in the gut, so that he fell backwards and the baby lived. Chaplain's assistant, and he got in trouble.
There's the night I got shot. I shouldn't have walked out of that one alive. It's that one's a long story. I'll try to give you
dig in,
and I'll try to give you and again it's a unit story, so I'll make it unfortunately somewhat vague. But the backside of the story still remains, is we were going after a very, very high target individual, and the way we wanted to go after him, we were told that we were going to go tonight and for these reasons, and we basically told him, hey, there's a smarter way to do business. We trust us. This is what we do. We'll hit him tomorrow, and under the circumstances that we want. And they basically said, that's fine. Then we'll send the Rangers. And we basically got together and we're like, people are going to die tonight if the Rangers go. And that's not knocking the Rangers. The Rangers are great dudes. But at the end of the day, they're not us. And this, when you do this job long enough, when you get a warning order, if this is going to be, one of those missions or not. And this was just going to be one of those missions. Everything was difficult about the target. There was no good way to get in. There was a lot of them. It was going to be a nasty one. And it was. And so we basically took it to a vote, and we're like, hey, are we going to go tonight, or are we going to let the Rangers go take this one? And every person in that room raised their hand. And again, it wasn't for glory purposes. Like we truly believe we were saving guys' lives that night by us taking a bad mission that we normally would not have taken. So we take off on this target, and just everything was difficult about it. Everyone loves the movie when guys are fast roping on the target. You don't want to fast rope on the target. Let me tell you, you don't want to be 30 feet off the ground on the noisiest thing in the valley, dangling on a rope or waiting for your turn to dangle on a rope. It is not a good feeling. It's a good way to get a helicopter shot down. It's a good way to get guys shot before they even get a chance to fight. So even though there are times it's the right call, it's not, it's rarely is it option A. We couldn't take that. And so unfortunately, this target was right in the middle of the village. So really the only good way to do it was to land outside the village and run all the way, into target, which unfortunately is going to take some time. And, the surprise is probably going to be given up. So that's what we did. We took that option. And by the time we got to target, there wasn't a single person in the inside the target house, but there was a fresh fire going. There's a lot of Taliban paper trail. So we knew someone was there. We knew the intel was right, that we knew they were there that night, that they just heard the helicopters and took off. So we had most of the assault team had a follow-on target they were going to go hit. We had reason to believe a house not too far away was a family member's house, and they were going to go do a follow-on target there. Seemed like a reasonable place for him to go. I was on what's called Squirter duty that night. Familiar with the term?
Squirter?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Squirter
when guys
control, Squirter
yeah,
duty.
yeah, when they jump, but yeah, when guys start spraying out in all directions, they could be running for weapons, they could be running just to run. But yeah, you'll explain it better to the audience. For the audience.
That's exactly right. Sometimes I hear the helos and they don't exactly have a plan. They just know they don't want to be in the house. They assume the guys in those helos are coming for them. So they'll usually, like I said, it's usually not a pre-planned thing they do. They just run and they hide in a field. They hide behind trees. They hide behind rocks. Anywhere they feel like they've gone far enough, and they just kind of hunker down. So it was me, a combo guy, a couple Afghans, and a dog guy, and but I was the only operator on the detail going out, and that's usually a no. Even though I had other Americans with me, you really want more than one operator with you, because at the end of the day, that commo guy was a Green Beret and the dog handler was a Green Beret. But in those roles they're filling, they're not filling Green Beret roles, if you will. Their job now is to be a dog guy. Their job now is to be the world's best commo guy. So I was really the only shooter going out. And that was definitely a mistake on my part. But I didn't want to take an assaulter off the follow-on crew, and leave them short. So I didn't take another one with me. And we went around. There were several pockets of small groups of individuals hiding from us. We took care of them pretty quick. And then we hear over the radio that the second place was a dry hole. And so now that makes Squirter duty even more important, because he's here. We know he's here. We know he's somewhere. And if he's not in any of these two houses, he's probably hiding in one of these Squirter pockets. So one of the what I didn't know at the time, but was going to be the second to last pocket of Squirters I come up against. They're hiding in this orchard. And I hate orchards. Orchards are the worst, because ISR can tell you, or whoever's giving you information can tell you how many people are in there, but it's rarely right. There's just too many places to hide. And it's people get shot up in orchards, I say fairly often, but it's not what you want. This orchard has this like half wall around this whole orchard. This orchard's about half the size of a football field, with a half wall that surrounds it. And we're sneaking up to this orchard, and I can see a group of them talking about 10 yards from maybe 5 yards from the half wall. And so I tell everyone, I don't know if I've ever told this story in this much detail. And I tell everyone, I said, hey, everyone stay here. I'm going to move up to this half wall. And after I throw a grenade, then I want you guys to move up on line, and and that'll kick off this assault. And I am giddy. Like, I'm already thinking this is going to be awesome. Like, the boys by the fire, when they hear this story, it's going to be amazing. And I sneak my way up to this half wall, and I'm kind of laying on my back with the half wall right here. And I get the grenade out, and I'm getting ready to chuck the grenade over this half wall. And I'm just excited. I'm like, man, this is going to be a good one. And I look over one last time to see if the guys are in their position. And this one Afghan is still kind of moving into his position. And he trips in the middle of the night. He trips and he lands. And I could hear those guys, speaking whatever language they're speaking. They're super close. And when he trips, they stop talking. It was so loud. And then I hear him running to the half wall. And as I'm standing here, their AKs are now over the half wall, just spraying everywhere. They just know there was a sound in the darkness. And I'm like, and I remember sitting there going, as they're just emptying mags with their barrels a couple feet over my face, going, just mad at the Afghan that he took this amazing moment from me. And so after they get done, spraying, I felt like I knew they were running away, but I didn't want to be wrong, and put my hand up there while they're reloading and get my hand shot holding a grenade. When I was, what felt like forever was a couple seconds, and I knew they weren't there anymore. I popped up real quick and I threw my grenade as hard as I could. Here's another thing that will surprise a lot of people. Grenades don't kill people, especially out in the open air in a field. I mean, you'll wound them and you'll piss them off, but grenades don't kill people. And they end up running away. And at this point, now I'm just super pissed off at them that they shot at our guys. I'm mad that my moment of glory was taken away by an Afghan tripping in the dark. And so I make sure that they're followed. And we haven't got Jackpot yet. So I'm fairly certain he's in this group. So they end up running away about a click away, 1,000 meters away from the target location. That's normally too far for a small group to venture out from the main element. Hindsight's always 20/20. At that point, I should have called for a couple more operators to plus up and let them know that I was going this far away from the main element. But I didn't. I was just out of anger, followed them, and at this point, I get talked on, and I get told, hey, they're in this area. And as we get really close to them, it's just the way the world works. Our comms go completely dark. We can't get a message out. We can't get a message in. So now it's just me and this small team without any comms at all, wandering around this small area that we know they're at, but we can't get any further intel of exactly where they're hiding like we kind of normally do. So there's this, and we're in this big field. The best way to describe it is there's this big bomb crater in this field. And I remember going up, looking inside it. It was a very dark night, no loom night. Your nods don't work as good on a no loom night. Like, your nods aren't just magic. They amplify the existing light. So a little bit of moonlight helps out your nods immensely. So it was a no moonlight, no loom night, and it was raining that night. And so, they're all fogged up, no loom. I looked down there and it didn't look like anything. So we go searching around. At this point, we get a little bit of radio chatter in and out talking about, hey, where are you guys at? hey, the helos are running out of gas. You know, they're either going to have to go all the way back and refuel and come back, which is going to take an hour, or we need you guys to hurry up and, you know, get done doing whatever you're doing and come back. And so we huddle up, and I tell them, I said, hey, all right, let's go back. But before we go back, that crater, I just my spider senses, whatever it is, like won't let me, you know, like completely, you know, I just don't feel right. And they're like, well, what do you want to do? And I had a couple ideas. I thought about throwing a grenade in that crater. But if I was wrong and they were hiding somewhere else, I would have definitely given up our position. So I didn't want to do that. You know, right, wrong, or indifferent, you know, people can armchair this decision all they want. But my plan was, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get us up on a line, and it's called a white light blip, which means I'm just going to turn on my white light for just a split second and kind of look underneath my nods so I can absolutely rule this out. And the thought process was, if I white light blip it, maybe, you know, if they're not looking in this direction, they might see something, but, you know, chances are they don't, you know, they'll just go, did you see that? They, you know, may not have really known where we are. It's really unusual. We don't normally use white lights, you know, on nighttime operations. But like I said, I had to clear this depression, and my nods just weren't good enough to do it. So I go up there and I go to white light blip it, and I could see at that point, those weren't rocks at the bottom of this depression. It was rocks and guys hiding underneath blankets. And in fact, I kind of didn't even intend to see anything. I kind of was just like, well, I'm just gonna. I blipped it. I started to turn away, and in my mind, it registered what I just saw, and so I came back and kept the white light on, and I said, the G-rated version is, there they are, get them, and you know, and we start shooting them. Unfortunately, I was the only one to take shots. The Afghans were more of a spectator that night, and the first guy I shot was still underneath his blanket, so he died. Didn't even know why. The second guy I transitioned over to was just kind of starting to look underneath his blanket. I had a suppressed gun at the time, but I wasn't running subsonic ammo, so you can hear it.
Right.
So between the white light and the rounds going off, I mean, he was interested to see what was going on, and so I gave him the good news. So, you know, the next guy over, he's a little bit further out underneath his blanket and starting to reach for his gun, and so I give him the same treatment his other two friends got. But every person I'm transitioning over to is a little bit closer to being up and ready. And so, you know, I send, you know, 4 to 6 rounds at each guy. But here's another thing that it's no one shoots guys twice and moves on. Like, you shoot guys until they stop, until they're no longer a threat. So, you know, everyone's getting 4 or 6. You know, the first guy got like 8 rounds. When I transition over to the last guy, he has his gun coming up, and I'm still and I just transitioned over to him, and I'm thinking he's closer to shooting me than I am him. And I pushed my gun as hard and fast as I can, threw a couple rounds his way. He went on full auto and sprayed up. The first couple rounds hit the base of my feet, kind of walking up. One of the rounds hits me right in my forearm, breaks my arm in half, and then the last round, as it turned me, it went right through the middle of my nods and broke my nods in half, and they're dangling on my face, and I spin around like 4 times and hit the ground. And I remember laying in the mud going, damn it. I knew I was going to get shot one day. I was the only guy on my team without a Purple Heart, the only guy. And I just remember going, that didn't hurt as bad as I thought it was going to hurt. And At that time, our commo guy, this all happens in a matter of 5 seconds. Our combo guy runs up and throws a grenade down into the hole, or not a hole, down into this big depression. And it, whatever it does, it probably lands beside some rock and it goes off. It doesn't hit him. But what it does is it reminds him that he has a grenade. And this happened for whatever reason on this particular rotation. Almost every time we introduced grenades, we got a grenade back. It's almost like reminding them, oh yeah, we carry these too. So he throws a grenade out of the hole and I'm laying on my back and it lands within arm's distance of me. And what saved my life was a muddy, rainy night. It sunk down into the mud. It went off a couple seconds later. It blasted my helmet off, my peltors to shred. It's got some scarring underneath my my beard. I got scars up and down my leg. But generally speaking, that mud tamped that grenade and absorbed most of that explosion. And so now I'm shot. My nods are shot off. I get hit by a grenade just a couple seconds later, and he goes to crawl out of the hole, and our commo guy, eventually fills him in with an absolute full mag. I mean, all 30 rounds into this guy, and it's over, kind of. So now he actually, gosh, almost he gets as he's crawling out, he sends out a couple like kind of security rounds and then tries to crawl out, and he hits our commo guy in the leg. And so our commo guy's shot and then kills him. I'm shot. I have no nods. I have an arm that to get to that point, we jumped a lot of walls trying to make a straight line to this point. Now I can't jump walls. I got oh gosh, can't forget these words. I got a tourniquet on my arm that without a doubt felt 10 times worse than getting shot. The tourniquet was absolutely excruciating. And it took us almost an hour to get back to our element. And during this hour, we made another mistake of, it was, again, that village was pretty lively. And so we're trying to sneak our way back, but we can't use the back roads, if we will. Like, we literally kind of have to use trails and roads within the village to quickly get back to our element. Well, when we stopped and checked out all of my my injuries, we used red light because we were still in a tactical situation, which I know better. The problem with using a red light is you can't see blood underneath a red light. And now my biggest injury that I was concerned about was my arm. I didn't complain about the massive bleeding in my leg or in my side because I didn't even feel that had happened. And so we never did a full body check on me to see if I had any other injuries. We just addressed the big injury without addressing doing a full body check. Again, something we knew better than, and just, didn't do it right when it counted. So about 45 minutes into this walk back that we had to take the long way around, I start blacking out. And I don't know, at the time, I didn't know why I was blacking out. And I'm telling them, like, hey guys, we got to stop. Like, I'm going to throw up and I'm about to pass out. And they're like, Brent, do not pass out. Like, we're not carrying your big ass. Like, we have another guy, with a shot leg. He can't carry you. Like, you've got to suck this up. And I remember telling, hey, I don't control if I black out, guys. I'm just telling you it's about to happen. And they're like, well, do what you can. We eventually made it back to the rest of the element. And at this point I'm limping, and I don't even know why I'm limping. I just know my leg hurts. And our medic comes up to me and goes, as cool as a cucumber, hey Brent, how's it going? Not good, Dan. I'm shot. He goes, why? He goes, I can see that. He goes, anything else wrong with you? I said, no, I'm just shot. Please look at my arm. None of the fentanyl lollipops are working. I took everyone's, I took everyone on patrol has a fentanyl lollipop, including me. I took mine. I took his. I'm eating everyone's fentanyl lollipop, trying to get rid of this pain. And it just wouldn't help with the pain at all. And he goes, what's wrong with your leg? I said, nothing. It's my arm. For the love of God, look at my arm. And he laughs and he sticks his thumb in this hole in my leg and says, nothing? And I was like, oh, Dan, why would you do that? He's like, you're such an idiot. And he cuts off my pant leg. He's like, what happened to your leg? And that was the first time I really realized that I had eaten that grenade and didn't really know it. I was passing out from a loss of blood.
Right.
And by the time I actually got to the helicopter, I did pass out from a lack of blood, and I passed. I woke up in Bagram the next day, after surgery. And I remember sitting on the hospital bed going, that was a crazy night. I kind of can't believe we got out of that one.
That is an unbelievable story. How long is the road to recovery for you?
Not long. I never missed a rotation. Yeah, I missed a couple jump trips. The biggest thing was they kept on doing washout surgeries on me because infection was a serious concern. I had taken my antibiotic pills. Luckily, it was one of the things I did do right. We were always told, you get shot, blown up, something, and and the nastiness of Afghanistan, you take these pills, and that's actually what saved my life. And even with those pills, infection was a big problem within my body. We finally got the infection under control. The doctors were trying to be nice, but they're like, hey, you should know, like, if we can't get this under control, you might lose your arm. And so, every time I went under surgery, I was always the first thing I checked to see if I still have my arm. They never ended up having to take my arm. They put a massive plate in there to keep my arm together. And the bones actually grow back pretty fast. And I was down for 3 months. I mean, I wasn't back to 100%, but I could operate 3 months later, and like I said, never missed a rotation out of it.
I'm so glad that you mentioned Syria, because ISIS obviously did horrific things in Syria and Iraq, and I'm curious if you think the general public has any idea of the savagery of some of the people that we're dealing with in that region of the world. And I want to preface this: when I was in college, ISIS was starting to become like a really big problem. And I remember I was a poli-sci major, which was the most useless degree in the history of the world. But we would have debates about, like, the rise of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, all this terrorism stuff. And there were kids at a major university that were saying there's really no difference between the terrorists and us. And they're only terrorists because we backed them into a corner. I'm like, you realize they're burning people in cages, right? Dude, how different is it compared to the reality on the ground when you're dealing with those animals?
Animals is exactly what they are. And people ask me about, getting shot, losing teammates, PTSD, whatever it is, or if it's, taking another person's life. And I always said, I never felt like I ever took another person's life. I shot a lot of two-legged animals. I shot a lot of people that were not human and did not deserve to be on this earth. So I sleep like a baby at night. And ISIS, without a doubt, was the most, savage enemy we had come across. They had this young, when Raqqa was still their stronghold, they had this battalion called the Young Lions Battalion. And they were like 7 and 8-year-old kids. And they were training them to be soldiers, which isn't that unique, except their final exercise was they would put them through this like CQB shoot house, and they would have live people, like enemy, like POW, Kurds, Christians, bound and gagged. And the same way we would go through and shoot paper targets in a shoot house, they're shooting people on their final exercise training these kids to murder. It's again, you know, that Jordanian pilot that they set on fire alive in a cage. You know, the Coptic Christians in Israel that they marched, I think it was 40 of them to the beach and just murdered them. The beheadings, I mean, you name it. They deserved everything they got and more. And to be honest with you, we should have gotten involved in that a lot earlier. That, you know, the only mistake America made was not doing anything until they had taken over half of Syria and half of Iraq. And now we were like, oh, maybe we should do something about this. And as I got older, I'm not the person that says we should be the world's police. I had no problem pulling out of Afghanistan. I have no problem of not being the world's police. But the moment they started cutting off American heads, we should have showed up, and we could have, and ISIS would have been a blip on the radar. But they cut off 5 American heads, and we still didn't do anything about it until they had almost taken over Iraq. It really was a blunder on America's part, to be honest with you.
Does it feel better killing someone like that compared to maybe, you know, a regime loyalist, or maybe I hear a lot of guys talk about some of the guys they fought in Afghanistan. They almost, I wouldn't say feel bad for them, but they're like, is this guy purely evil? Maybe, maybe not. But they all say when it came to ISIS, it just felt better. Would you agree with that?
I would. I mean, the way I would rate it, if you will, and everyone will have a different, you know, experience and a different answer. You know, in Iraq, sometimes we were in the middle of, you know, of a civil war. You know, at some point, you know, that at the Afghanistan, I respected the guys in Afghanistan. They, you know, they always come out to fight. You know, they're at least willing to die for their cause. But man, I really, really, really hated ISIS. I never walked by a dead ISIS body with anything other than just joy.
Were those guys?
I know that sounds weird, but
no, it doesn't sound weird. No, it doesn't sound weird at all.
Yeah.
Where you know, ISIS presented it, and I'm enjoying this a lot. I think our viewers are going to be fascinated by this, especially the younger ones. ISIS they projected, you know, we're so tough, we're so violent, you can't reach the level that we get to. If you captured any of these guys, did they drop the tough guy act pretty quickly, or did they try to maintain that in custody?
You had a good mix of like some of the foreign fighters that would come through, that they were tenacious, you know, and they'd look at you like, man, if you'd take these flex cuffs off me, I'd choke the life out of you right now. I mean, they just stare at you with dead eyes. Yeah, you get a mixture of everything. And there are plenty of ISIS fighters on the front lines, you know, especially when the march to Raqqa was going on, that they didn't want to be on the front lines, but it was either stay on the front lines and fight, or or retreat and get killed by ISIS. And you could still say, well, you know, you still enjoyed watching them die, you know, because they, you know, yeah, like they raised their hand to come fight for evil, and then they found out what evil was, and so you already voted, you came to do this, and now, you know, be careful what you wish for.
Well, you know, you did a great job explaining what it all was and kind of how it came to be, but there were this box of patches that showed up, and I was coming back from running our selection course right after September 11th. And I showed up and I saw this box and looked in the box, and there are all these FDNY patches. And so you could see they still had like the blue threads from where they had cut them off of people's uniforms. And some of them had phrases, you know, die mother, rot in hell, you know, hope you burn in hell. Some of them had names, and I kind of got the gist of it was they want us to carry these forward And, you know, whether it's like, I don't think we would throw stuff out like death cards, but I think that was kind of in their idea of, so somebody somewhere knew somebody where I was, and they made this thing happen, but just kind of anonymously. I've never been able to get to the bottom of, you know, who sent it and all of that. So I had this patch with me, always like breast pocket, carried it around, had it on my, you know, where all my personal items and stuff like that was always sitting there. And, you know, it got to go be a part of a lot of historic stuff. And when there were some unique circumstances that happened where my patch had a name on the back. And in 2005, September 11th, they had family members of those that were killed, reading the names of those who had passed away. And I'm on my treadmill at home and running, and I see this beautiful blonde woman, and she says the name that was on the patch that I had. And I was like, wow, that is crazy. And that was what started kind of the quest of like, well, who was this guy? I didn't know that he was necessarily a person that was killed. Maybe it was just a fireman that wanted his name, you know, to be carried forward, whatever it might be. So anyway, I did some research, found out where he was stationed, read about him. And as I was reading about him, it was almost as if I was reading about myself. And, you know, dude loved to wear flannel, and he was always the life of the party and liked to have a good time, loved animals, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I felt like, man, I need to do something with this. I can't go be public, you know, like let's have a news crew there and, hey, here I am. I'm an active member of an organization and, you know, don't want to talk about that. So I asked a buddy of mine who was in New York, you know, hey, the next time I'm up, whenever that is, can we go by this place? And, you know, I just want to drop this off super low key, be in and out. And, you know, they can do with it whatever they want. They can give it to his family. They can, you know, any of that stuff. So it kind of things transpired from there. But anyway, that's kind of how it went. So I thought, okay, I don't want to just take this back and be like, hey, I'm returning this patch. I've got to do something with it. And just putting it in a frame by itself didn't seem appropriate. So I took one of the assault flags off of my assault vest and put it in there. And then I thought, okay, I went and took it to somebody who could do that. And they were like, what about a coin? What if we put a challenge coin? And I was like, yeah, I'll get a unit coin and put that in there too. And that's what I did. So it's just this beautiful, very powerful, you know, both sides represented. My real intent in returning the patch to the firehouse was to let the firemen know, like, my brothers are over there right now shellacking dudes because of what happened September 11th. So this was at a time when politically, you know, it was, why are we there? Oh, this is like an oil thing. You know, someone's politically got an agenda that, well, wait, we all voted for going to war over there. And now all of a sudden we're questioning it when it starts to have a human toll. And so the news was every day, you know, 3 more guys were killed today, and questioning why we were there and all of that. And I wanted the firemen to know that we got your back because of what happened. We haven't forgotten. Doesn't matter if everybody else in America forgot, we didn't forget, and we got you.
Wow. I'm speechless. I could clip that and spread it, and that doesn't make you proud to be an American. I don't know what will. Did they say anything specifically to you when you presented it to them?
Well, that kind of turned into a whole other thing. Like the guy that took me over there the night before, he starts telling me like, hey, we're gonna go there tomorrow. Like, okay, cool. We're going to go at 10 a.m. because all the guys coming in on the morning shift will be there, and everybody leaving from the night shift will be there. So it'll be a full house. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be up there, you know, speaking in front of a group of people. Like, I have nothing prepared. This isn't what I wanted to do. And anyway, it kind of transpired to like, well, the family's going to be there too. And it, like, dude, you were putting so much pressure on me. Like, I don't want to do this. So anyway, that was kind of how it rolled out. So at some point, I was being as benign as I could possibly be, hey, here's this thing, there was a whole lot of explaining about, like, is this guy in the army? What is this guy? Like, nobody really understood. I can say that, after what I told them, that, I don't think there were too many dry eyes in the firehouse. So it was a powerful life moment.